Hi everybody, and welcome to my first posting on my new YouTube channel. So based on a number of requests from previous students that I've taught and friends and colleagues of mine, I have decided to post my videos somewhere accessible and somewhere that people who are revising their Leaving Cert English and eventually their Junior Cert English can just dip in and out of different videos to do some revision. So the first thing I want to talk about is Macbeth. There seems to be a little bit of confusion where Macbeth is concerned, whereby yes, we're understanding the themes, yes, we're understanding the character relationships, but don't forget the essence of who Shakespeare was. Shakespeare was somebody who left subtle hints everywhere. And when you piece together those subtle hints, you unveil this beautiful message full of strength, and suddenly everything just makes perfect sense. So let's begin with the idea of blood. Blood is everywhere in the Shakespeare play Macbeth. Blood is behind the power that everybody seeks. Blood is the life force. Blood is the guilt. Blood is everything. So that at the end of your text, you are left with a country that is bleeding, damaged, and corrupt. From the very beginning, Macbeth is on the battlefield, and he is artfully and skillfully carving his way through a passage of people. He's not just killing, he is doing it with pizzazz, with a panache. His sword is smoking. He is doing it so successfully because the thrill of that bloodshed is music to him. But it is bloodshed, and that bloodshed represents violence. An imaginary trail of bloodshed follows Macbeth as he moves forward. Because once he is crowned Thane of Cawdor and his mind moves towards the death of Duncan, that inevitable bloodshed is present. It is there when he smears the guards with the blood, and it is there when he kills Duncan. And eventually, Macbeth is wading through that blood of violence, disease, and corruption. Through the death of Banquo, the death of Macduff's family, the eventual death of Macbeth at the end of the text, when he has almost completely redeemed himself. So why this blood? Shakespeare wants us to understand that blood means violence. He wants us to understand that it is propelling your characters forward. They are coated so far in violence, especially where Macbeth is concerned, that he can't wade out again. He is drowning in this sea of blood. And on the other hand, you have Lady Macbeth. And Lady Macbeth is in the dark, washing this invisible blood from her hands that won't go. That blood represents guilt. And she is also waded so far in the blood of violence that she's drowning. But coupled with that is the blood that now represents guilt stained on her hands. Blood is everywhere. It's in every reference. The country's bleeding. The country's diseased. At the end of your text, from the reign of Macbeth, you can see that the country is like a wounded soldier, a wounded warrior on its side, gouged and bleeding and damaged, all from the corrupt reign of Macbeth. So when you are asked to concentrate on the imagery, the symbols, anything that isn't your theme or your relationship or your central idea, then you think, what am I being shown? What am I being asked to think about? Your very first one is the blood. The blood is everywhere. One small quote can propel on to another small quote, can propel on to the reason a character makes decisions, the entire character development. Everything is centred around this thirst for blood and what that end result is. On the other side, you have darkness. I think to be that heavily invested and interested in blood, you have to be living in the dark. And Macbeth is. And from the very beginning, when you meet the witches, you meet a supernatural entity that is living in the darkness. They are controlling the darkness. They are controlling the thunder, the lightning. It is a very, very sinister scene. Even as small children, we are taught that the bad things happen at night, and that once the sun rises, everything becomes better, and that evil or that darkness loses its hold. Well, that is mirrored, echoed, and displayed all over the play Macbeth. You can see it through the witches. You can see it on the night that Duncan is killed. The stars do not come out, as voiced by Banquo. You can see the cloak of darkness that covered the deeds of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Everything is done in that shroud of dark night, that psychic landscape where all of the dark, corrupt thoughts go out onto your landscape and all you can see is darkness with no pinpricks of light. That's your darkness. That's your inner character coming out in front of you in the dark. You mix that with the blood that we previously discussed, and you have one very, very dark play. So who represents the light? Is there any light? In the most unusual place do you find the light. Toward the end, when we see Lady Macbeth sleepwalking, in her hand she holds a candle. And all around her you can see darkness, darkness, darkness being kept at bay by this one candle that she holds. And that candle keeps the evil at bay. When Macbeth hears of Lady Macbeth's death, he says, "Out, out, brief candle." She's gone. That one brief brightness in his life has been extinguished. And now he's had enough. Now he knows his death is imminent, and he will also be extinguished. So what I find quite beautiful about Macbeth is it's not cut and dried. It's not that we start off positive, we move to negative, and we end up lovely and justified. We do, but there's so much more. You have characters who truly do love one another. It's misguided, it's strange, but then isn't every kind of love. And that's what Shakespeare harnessed. He harnessed the human condition. He harnessed our inability to turn away from darkness, our inability to see our own flaws, our inability to stop others when we see their flaws. We are coated with this human condition, as were the creatures and the people that William Shakespeare gave life to. So that's all I really want to talk about for the moment, and I suppose it's a way of letting me dip my toes, so to speak, into the water of YouTube. Really not familiar with it. So any comments, any feedback, I'd be delighted to know. If there is anything that you would like to see covered in the coming weeks and months, I will absolutely welcome any and all suggestions. My plan is to move from Macbeth in stages, time dependent of course, whether that is weekly or several times a week. I will do my very best. I'm going to cover the images as we did just now. I'm going to tackle the themes, your character-based questions, and I will eventually move through the structure of the answer, moving through your set list for poetry, and if people feel that this may be beneficial, I will of course tackle some of the junior certificate syllabus also. Okay, so my Facebook page is Tremor Tuition. My own name is Dimfinite Nugent. I'm on Instagram under the tag The English Teacher, and I thank you so much for joining me on this very first evening.